Hey nerds, I'm just Jamie and I'm here with
your friend Claude.
And this is Nerd Bomber versus Movies, the show where two movies fight and we pick a winner. Now, before we even get started today, we got to talk about a couple of things. First, like I said, in each episode of the show, two movies fight, right? Well, you may ask, why are they fighting? You know, they got beef. Usually what we're going to do, we have a reason why any pair of movies are featured. Sometimes they're going to be linked by a director or an actor or a genre or some other esoteric reason we'll come up with later. Something we haven't thought of yet. But the point is, we'll let you know. Okay, that's the first thing. Secondly, how do we decide who wins? Well, we're professionals around here.
That's right.
So we aren't just going to be pulling things out of thin air or anywhere else. We have a scoring rubric. That's right, a scoring rubric. We'll each score the movie. It's 3 basic categories. 1 is visuals, 2 is performances, 3 is the writing, which includes plot and story. Each category will be scored out of 10. We'll add the 3 categories, average them out, combine them, boom, we'll get a winner. Unless we have a tie, that seems unlikely. We'll figure it out when that pops up. Lastly, we aren't going to show you the movies on the show, okay? Maybe a clip, a trailer. Point is, you can go find the movies on your own. You can watch them before, you can watch them after, etc. Whatever you want to do.
Copyright, folks.
So that's the basics. Clear enough? That cover everything?
I think so.
All right, so let's get on with today's show already, if that's okay with everybody. Today's matchup features 2 films. They both take place in 1938. They both try to capture the spirit of old-time Hollywood adventure serials and comic strips. The first one, in fact, is based on a comic strip created by Chester Gould in 1931. That's 1990's Dick Tracy from Buena Vista, or we like to call it Disney. The second is a film based on a 1982 comic character created by Dave Stevens, but it's very much in the spirit of something from 50 years before that, and that's the Rocketeer from Disney in 1991. So first up, Dick Tracy, written by Jack Epps and Jim Cash, the writing team behind Top Gun, Turner and Hooch, Anaconda, among other things. It was actually the pet project of director and star Warren Beatty. He had his eyes on doing a Dick Tracy movie as far back as 1975. Between then and 1990, all the hunky Hollywood stars of the 70s and 80s were considered. Eastwood, Ford, Gere, Selleck, Gibson. Eventually, Beatty got to make his project his way. Along with Beatty, the main cast consists of Madonna as Breathless Mahoney, Al Pacino as Big Boy Caprice, Glenn Headley as Tess Trueheart, Charlie Cosmos as a kid. He doesn't have a huge filmography. He was in Hook and What About Bob? I could go on the rest of the cast. It's absolutely chock full of huge stars. I'm not going to do that, so watch out for a lot of fun cameos and appearances. The movie is full of them. Now, I have never actually seen Dick Tracy before today, so I'm excited for it. It was a big box office hit, but I'll turn to you, Claude. Any thoughts or experiences with the movie?
Yeah, I still have my 3rd grade Dick Tracy folder. And I think it's got a bunch of stickers all over it. I remember the merch a lot, mostly from that era. I wanted a yellow hat and coat so bad.
Of course.
But you just couldn't get them anywhere. And which is shocking, because today they would make sure that a kid's toy aisle had a replica costume available.
Absolutely.
But we're talking 1990. So yeah, a couple of the toys and some of the smaller stuff. And I actually did get to go see it in the theater. And it was 1990 was my busiest theater year, and Dick Tracy was a part of it.
Yeah, I don't remember being super involved with theater going at that time. The biggest thing I remember from Dick Tracy is the trailer playing on a VHS, and I want to say that was the Honey, I Shrunk the Kids VHS, but I don't know for sure. I'd have to do more research. So I guess that's it for the intro. We're off to watch Dick Tracy, and we'll see you on the other side.
Gangland enforcers broke the arms of an elderly news dealer this afternoon when he refused to share his week's receipts with them. Stacks of newspapers were tossed in the gutter as the thugs wrecked the business and made their getaway. Lunchtime crowds were paralyzed by the suddenness of the crime. Not a hand was raised in protest. Organized crime is their name.
Okay, we're back from Dick Tracy. A lot going on in that film, but before we get into that, we're going to move on. Second movie today, as I mentioned earlier, is 1991's The Rocketeer. This movie was written by Danny Bilson and Paul DeMeo. They are the writing team behind a lot of B movies in the 80s, most notably Zone Troopers and Trancers, which we're both big fans of. He's been busy since then. The director was Joe Johnston. He's known for doing effects-heavy films like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, Jumanji, and more recently he did Captain America, The First Avenger. The film stars Billy Campbell as the Rocketeer, Cliff Secord. Campbell had only done 2 films previous to this, but he's worked regularly since. He was most notably in Bram Stoker's Dracula and Gettysburg. He's not necessarily an A-lister, but he's been busy. He's been a working actor. Alongside Campbell is Jennifer Connelly as Jenny. Connolly had done a lot more movies before making The Rocketeer, most notably Labyrinth. And she would, of course, become a big-time Hollywood A-list star in the 90s and beyond. Everybody's seen something with Jennifer Connelly in it. Rounding out the main cast is Alan Arkin and Timothy Dalton. Timothy Dalton is a lot of fun in this movie. He's a lot of fun in a lot of things he does. Love him in Flash Gordon. I know you're a fan of his version of Bond.
Yep.
Obviously, the movie had a lot of clout. It had Disney putting their actual name on it. None of this Buena Vista nonsense. The intention was for this movie to become a franchise, of course. Unfortunately, it didn't really make its money back once you factor in promotion. So that franchise never happened, although there is a live-action version that's supposed to be happening, so we'll see how that goes. Now, I have seen The Rocketeer, only a few years ago, actually, for the first time. I liked it quite a bit. I didn't see it back when it came out. It was kind of big. There was a lot of merch. There was a lot of iconography around us as kids. You know, it's bright, it's fun, it looks great. It's generally a good time. It's very much a good version of those pulpy serial adventure movies it's trying to serve as an homage to. But Claude, again, like Dick Tracy, I know you have a pretty strong connection to this movie. You're a big fan. Any thoughts about The Rocketeer?
Yeah, let's see. I think the haircut, Billy Campbell's Cliff Secord haircut, was something that stuck out to me that I chased for years, that I wanted as soon as I saw it when I was a kid. 30s hair is pretty cool in general. I could not find a Rocketeer action figure. I don't know if they made a proper one back then, but what I did have was a comic book that was touted as a 3D audio and visual experience. You had to wear 3D glasses to read it and listen to them read the dialogue on cassette. And let me tell you, that was surround sound before surround sound was surround sound.
It's funny that you have a comic book adaptation of a movie that was adapted from a comic book.
Exactly.
It's funny how those things come back around. All right, that's enough talking. We're going to hit play on The Rocketeer, and we'll see you when we're done.
How do I look?
Like a hood ornament.
All right, we're back from watching The Rocketeer. Claude, I think it's safe to say we both like both of these movies quite a bit.
Very much.
But like I said earlier, we're professionals here, so we're going to do what we said we're going to do. We're going to go to the scorecards, that is, which in this case is score dry erase boards because our budget's limited here, folks. So first up, turn to you, Dick Tracy scores.
I scored Dick Tracy with these numbers in the following categories. The visuals, I give an 8.5 because this is a fantastic looking movie. The color design, the matte paintings, the use of camera tricks, it's all top notch, not just for the time, but for any time. In the performances, I gave them an 8 as well. As you mentioned, all-star cast, everybody going over the top everywhere they can. Maybe a little too much in places, but very good overall. And for the writing, that's where I feel it's probably the weakest part of this movie. I give it a 6. I think it could have been a little tighter in a lot of places. Some of that might have been improv on the day. Some of the dialogue is a little stiff. I'm going to have to go with 8.5, 8, and 6.
All right. We're not as far away as you might think. I think this is one of the rare cases where I might be a little bit harder on a movie than you are. That almost never happens. So here are my scores. So, Dick Tracy, visuals, I gave an 8. I agree with you. They look great. They're very surrealistic. And in that way, they don't really age. Because they weren't supposed to look real at that time when the movie was made. So they don't look real now, but they serve the purpose. They bring comic strip to life, I think was the idea there.
Very well, yeah.
And I think it looks great. So yes, I gave it an 8. Performances is where we differ the most. I gave performances a 6.5. 6.5, there's nothing wrong with that. I feel like a lot of the performances, the actors just doing what's in front of them. Warren Beatty is just being Warren Beatty. Glenn Headley's not really doing anything super interesting. Obviously, Al Pacino is taking it to 11, 12, 13.
Sure.
And that's where you start to think about, well, maybe he was pushing it a little bit too far at times, like you mentioned. So again, a 6.5 doesn't indicate there's anything wrong with them. They didn't really stand out to me except for the contrast between everybody's sort of low-key performances and Al Pacino coming at you. And then for writing, I think we were the same. I gave a 6 for writing. I kind of agree with you. Some of the dialogue is a little stilted. I think the movie, there's a lull in the second act.
Yeah.
I think that the plot could have been tightened up a little bit. The movie runs 106 minutes, and I think it would have been a really good, tight movie at about 90 minutes. So I think that's kind of its weakest link. So there are our scores. Again, I'll show my dry erase board on screen. I got 8, 6.5, 6. Claude's got 8.5, 8, and 6. So we'll do some tabulations, but first, the Rocketeer. All right, so those are the scores for Dick Tracy. That is. We're moving on to the Rocketeer now.
But before we do, I'm going to interrupt you for a second.
All right.
I think it's very important to throw in a mention of Madonna's performance, which is a key piece of why I scored it so high. She basically played a dual role, and it called for a lot of range for somebody who is kind of only known for singing at that point.
Specifically, her acting has been derided.
Exactly.
Quite a few times.
This might have been her best performance on film.
All right, fair enough. All right, so now we're going to move on to the Rocketeer, if that's okay.
Now we can.
All right, so Rocketeer scores. I guess I'll go first this time.
Okay.
So I got my card here, Rocketeer. Same for visuals. I gave it an 8. The special effects of the Rocketeer age a little bit more because they're of their time. You know, composite graphics and a lot of matting, optical layering going on, things like that. But I still think they look great. And, along with the actual effects, you have to think about the costuming and the set design and just the overall production design. I think overall the movie looks great with that sort of like retro future tech thing going on. So I'm a big fan of that aesthetic. So I gave it a high score there. Performances, I gave a 7.5. Again, it's pretty standard stuff. I don't think anybody's sort of hamming it up too much. Like I said, Timothy Dalton is a lot of fun, but nobody's kind of going too far. You could make the argument that it's similar to Dick Tracy, where most of the actors just kind of doing the work that's necessary to accomplish, they're just speaking the dialogue. But I think it's a little bit more well handled, more elegantly handled in this movie, even if it's a little bit less fun maybe because Dick Tracy is way over the top. And then my final category for writing, I gave it a 7.5. Again, I find the movie not to have big lulls in the action. It doesn't seem too long and stretched out. It seems tight. It seems quick, fast, fun. So it gets a little bit of a better score than Dick Tracy did in the writing category. So again, there's mine for The Rocketeer. Again, visuals 8, performances 7.5, writing 7.5. Over to you.
Well, you scored every category a half point higher than me. I am notoriously harder on movies. I guess today is no exception. Which is weird because I love The Rocketeer. But I do feel like I have to echo your sentiments about the way the effects have aged.
Sure.
You see things more that stand out that are a product of their time. You see the dark edges on the optical effects, and especially in the flying scenes. And, that's fine. But I just compared to the way Dick Tracy has aged, 7.5 for The Rocketeer for me on the visuals. Costume design is fantastic. I love everything about that. Performances, I go with a 7. And it's largely the same thing you said. There's nobody that's in this movie that you can point to as like giving some kind of tour de force performance. I will say Timothy Dalton is probably the closest because he's essentially playing two characters, much like Madonna did in Dick Tracy. He's got to be the ultimate hero and the ultimate villain in the same movie.
Plus, he's Timothy Dalton.
Exactly. That's worth 6 points on its own. And for the writing, I give it a 7 because I do think it's handled with a little more style, a little more. It's a little smarter sounding than Dick Tracy. Everything's a little tighter. The story is a little more focused. So it's 7 in that compared to the Dick Tracy score of 6 for me. And again, there's room for improvement, but that's where I'm sitting with The Rocketeer.
All right, fair enough. So we have scored Dick Tracy. We have scored The Rocketeer. We're going to get the big board. We're going to tabulate our scores, and we'll be right back with the results. All right, Dick Tracy versus Rocketeer. Things have been scored, things have been tabulated, things have been averaged, things have been added up, etc. And we've got the final score on the big board right here. Let's take a look. There you have it. Dick Tracy, 7.15. Rocketeer, 7.4. The winner is The Rocketeer. Thoughts, surprises, feelings?
I'm a little surprised. I was a little nervous because I like The Rocketeer more than I like Dick Tracy, but by a smidge. But I scored Dick Tracy higher, and yet the Rocketeer still prevailed, as ultimately he probably should have.
Well, you're welcome, because I think my scores kind of helped the Rocketeer's case a little bit
100%.
in this situation. All right, so that's it. That's our battle. The battle's been won. The Rocketeer comes out on top. But I think, you know what? We really like both of these movies. They're both big recommends. If you haven't seen them, go watch them. If you have seen them, go watch them again. We like them both, so we can't say enough good things about them, really, I don't think.
No.
So, all right. Well, that's it for this episode of Nerd Bomber versus Movies. Obviously, you can find us here on YouTube. You must already be here watching it, so that's easy enough. We have a podcast, the Nerd Bomber Podcast, can be found on Instagram at Nerd Bomber Pod, and from there you can find our individual pages and info on all the stuff we put out into the Nerdverse. You know, Claude does some music once in a while, does some TikTok stuff, does some photography. I do some comic books. So it's all there. Find us on Instagram, and you'll find your way to us. So that's it for your friend Claude. I'm just Jamie. Until the next battle.
Aloha.
Please deposit litter in trash receptacles as you exit the auditorium. The perfect gift for any occasion, gift certificates are available at the box office. Please don't talk during the movie. Thanks for visiting with us. Buckle up and drive safely. See you next week.